The Boy Who Invented Numbers. Chapter 10. Evan's Heaven. "Well, I can't sit here and talk about my problems," Nina said, dabbing a tear from her eye. "We have another man's life to consider." "So, how do we find your son, if he's living in the woods?" Pilk asked. "Well, just by chance, tonight is a full moon," Nina said, "and that's the time you are most likely to find him." "So we'll be in the dark?" Vienna asked her. "In the forest?" "Yes, my dear," Nina replied with a soothing voice, "but you'll be safe if you stay together, and if I give you something that will protect you." Nina got up and shuffled over to a dark corner of her cave. She came back a few moments later, holding something wrapped in a piece of rough cloth, which she opened to reveal a thin wooden tube with holes along its length. "This is all I have to remind me of my son, and it is very dear to me," Nina said with a slight tremor in her voice. "But as it's my son you must find, then this will help you find him." "What is it?" Pilk asked her. "It's a flute," Nina said. "I used to play it to Evan as a boy to help him to sleep." "How does it work, Nina?" Vienna asked her. "I've never seen one before." "Oh, it's been quite a long time since I played it last," Nina said. "But let me see." She raised the flute to her lips and blew gently across one end. Neither Pilk nor Vienna were prepared for such a beautiful and haunting sound, like a spring breeze drifting past them and filling the cave. As Nina played and moved her fingers across the holes, new sounds came alive and danced around their heads and straight through them. They were both spellbound, as if by magic. Nina finally came to a stop, and when Pilk turned to Vienna, he saw she had her eyes shut and seemed to be in a dream, until he nudged her gently. "Did you fall asleep, Vienna?" Pilk asked her. No, I just felt like I was somewhere else," she replied, blinking her eyes. "I dreamt I was drifting amongst the clouds on a moonlit night." Nina let out a sob. "How strange you should say that," Nina said. "That was Evan's favourite melody. He called it his moon song." "It's just so beautiful. The sound, I mean," Vienna said. "Did you make the flute yourself?" "No, it's something I picked up on my travels," Nina said. "I spent some time with a wise old medicine woman who taught me many things as well as how to play the flute. She gave it to me as a gift when I finally decided to move on." "Oh, would you teach me how to play, Nina, please?" Vienna jumped up. "Well, I suppose I'd better give you a quick lesson," Nina laughed, "as you are going to need to play it in the woods. It's the only way you're going to find my son." It was no surprise, of course, that Vienna picked up playing the flute in almost no time at all. She was like that with everything, and it wasn't long before she was even able to play a reasonable version of Nina's moon song. Pilk had a go at playing the flute as well, but he was only able to make a few embarrassing toots and whistles, so he decided that flute playing wasn't for him. "I'll be happy to teach you more later," Nina finally said to Vienna, "but I think that will be enough for now. Do you remember the other things I asked you to find?" "Oh, yes," they both said together. "Honey, mint, willow bark, fruit, and a moondrop flower." "Well then, I suppose you'd best be on your way," Nina said. "Remember to stay together, look out for wild creatures, and if you find all the other things by nightfall, then make your way down to the lagoon, and as the moon rises, play that very tune on the flute. I know Evan will answer it and come to you." Vienna paused a moment, then said, "Is there anything you would like us to say to your son, Nina, from you?" Nina sniffed, and her eyes glistened. Just tell him I will always love him, no matter where he is. And she turned and walked back into her cave to be with her memories. By the time the sun had begun to set, Pilk and Fienna had found the mint leaves near the village, the honey not far from where they had rescued Sam, this time without any bears, and the willow bark down by the lagoon, where Pilk had lit a small fire to keep them warm. So, we still have the fruit and the moondrop flower to find, Pilk said to Fienna. I think we might have to look for the fruit tomorrow, Fienna replied. It's getting dark, and I think the moon is about to rise. She was right. The soft light of the moon began to crawl up the darkening sky, and they could see a few stars beginning to show themselves. I think now might be the right time to play Nina's flute, Pilk said. I'm not too happy about being out here in the woods at night, especially after everything else that's happened today. Fienna brought the flute out from her bag and held it to her lips, the way Nina had shown her earlier. Then she blew gently, and the whole forest seemed to go into a hush, as if every creature was listening. Fienna played it almost as perfectly as Nina, and Pilk was amazed and entranced by the beauty of the sound. It seemed to fit in with the night sounds of the forest, the birds tweeting, owls hooting, and night callers announcing the rising of the moon. Even the babbling of a stream nearby seemed to join in with the music. From the distance they heard a sound like a wolf or a wild dog baying at the moon, and they both moved a little closer to the fire. Fienna played the melody for a few minutes more, and then put the flute down. They sat silently, listening to all the sounds of the forest around them. Mother, a soft voice near to them said from the darkness, is that you? They both snapped their heads round and saw a small, thin man with a beard, nearly as long as his body, standing a short distance away, blinking in the light of the fire. It's Evan, Pilk whispered to Fienna. Keep playing. I think he likes it. Fienna stood up slowly and began playing the moon song melody on the flute again, and the funny little man swayed from side to side and hummed along with her. He came a little nearer, and he looked about 100 years old, and was covered in hair and dirt and leaves, probably from years of living wild in the forest. Oh, I haven't heard this for so long, the man croaked, with a voice that sounded like it wasn't used very much. It's my moon song, my mother's song. When Fienna finally stopped playing, the little old man sat down on the ground and lowered his head and cried. Hello, Evan, Fienna said softly to him. Your mother, Nina, sent us to find you. My mother sent you? The man croaked, and looked up at them with eyes that seemed younger than the rest of him. Who are you? Hello, Evan. I'm Pilk, Pilk said. And this is Fienna. And your mother sent us because she said that you are the only person who knows where to find the moondrop flower. We need it to make medicine, Fienna added. Oh, and she said to tell you that she still loves you. Oh, well, I love her too. I still love her, he said. But I live here now, in the forest, near my father. Is your father here? Pilk asked, and instantly felt stupid. Oh, no, Evan cried. He's everywhere, in everything, in the trees, and the river, and the wind. Pilk wasn't quite sure what to say to that. It just sounded so weird. Why do you say that, Evan? Fienna said gently, crouching down nearer to him. You don't mean he's here in body, do you? Of course not, Evan cried. What do you think I am, crazy? That had crossed Pilk's mind, if he was totally honest. No, my father's spirit is here, Evan continued. This is where everybody's spirit comes from and goes back to. Surely you know that. The animals will tell you that, if you listen to them. Now Pilk was convinced that Evan had completely lost touch with Stone Age mankind, but he decided to keep his opinions to himself, not wanting to upset Fienna, like he had with Sam before. Fianna was a little more gentle and a lot more patient than Pilk. "Do you talk with the forest animals, Evan?" Fianna asked him softly.
"Oh, yes, all the time," Evan said.
"Can you hear what they're saying now?" Fianna asked with curiosity.
"Yes," Evan said. "I can hear the birds putting their babies to bed, and the frogs all singing together, and there are some fox cubs play fighting in the bushes just over there."
Pilk and Fianna listened and admitted they could hear the very things Evan had just described.
Are you sure?" Pilk said, not entirely convinced. "What's that wolf saying in the distance then?" "Oh, he's asking if anybody heard the strange sound of your flute," Evan said, and then he stood up and made a sound almost exactly like the sound they had just heard.
Then, just a moment later, they heard the wolf call back, and Evan sat down again, smiling.
"There you go," he said. "I've just told it that you're on no danger. You're safe now."
Both Pilk and Fianna's mouths fell open, and they were left wide-eyed with disbelief. Fianna finally recovered enough to speak again. "Evan, will you help us find the moondrop flower?" she asked him. "We need it badly to help a friend of ours get better."
"Oh, yes, of course, I forgot," Evan said, jumping up. "Where are my manners? I'm not used to people, you know."
"We understand," Fianna said kindly.
Come quickly," Evan beckoned them fiercely. "You're lucky you came when you did. They'd just be starting to bloom up on the hillside under the full moon."
He disappeared into the dark forest, and then suddenly reappeared.
"Oh, I forgot you don't know your way around like I do," he said, and he took 3 burning sticks out of the fire and handed them out, so they each held one. "Try to keep up, though. I don't think there's much time."
It wasn't easy finding their way in the dark, even with their torches, but Evan kept to some sort of path, and soon they stepped out into a clearing and were stunned by the beauty of what they saw. Laid out before them was a carpet of beautiful white flowers as far as the eye could see, each with their faces pointed up to the moon, and a fragrance that reminded them of summer nights.
"There you are," Evan said proudly. "Is this what you're looking for?"
"Oh, how beautiful," Fianna said. "It's like a blanket of snow."
"This is my most special place," Evan said in a hushed voice. "It is where my father's spirit lives, and mine. To me, this is heaven."
"Thank you, Evan," Fianna said. "Thank you so much for bringing us here. How can I ever repay you?" Without warning, she threw her arms around Evan and hugged him tight. It was difficult to tell who was more surprised, Evan or Pilk. It was clear that Evan hadn't had contact with another human person for longer than he could remember, and memories of his mother swam back into his mind.
"There is one thing you could do," Evan said quietly. "Would you mind playing my mother's moon song one more time before we leave here?"
And so, as the moon rose and the stars twinkled and the moondrop flowers swayed in the warm, gentle breeze, the beautiful sound of the flute drifted out into the night. And finally, they understood why Evan never wanted to leave this place.
"Well, I suppose we'd better start off home," Pilk said, once they had picked up a few moondrop flowers and put them in Fianna's bag. "How are we ever going to find our way back to the tribe in the dark?" Fianna asked. "I'll take you back," Evan said.
"All the way back to the village?" Fianna said, somewhat surprised. "Where your mother is?"
"I think it's about time that I told her that I love her," Evan said with a sigh, "from a son to his mother."